I'm Mimi, and last month my first ever picture book was published, which means that I can now go into a shop in Australia and see a book that I illustrated on the shelf, which is such a dream come true. It's called The Love That Grew and is written by Sarah Ayub and published by HarperCollins Australia. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining how I got the book deal, how the illustrating process worked with a publisher, and how I got paid. And this is of course just my experience with this particular book process, but hopefully it can give you some insight if you're wanting to illustrate picture books yourself. So how did I end up getting a picture book deal? In May of 2021, I got an email from HarperCollins Australia asking me if I'd be interested in working on a picture book for them. They had seen my illustrations on Instagram and thought my style would be a good fit for a book they had coming up. Obviously, I let them know that I was definitely interested in illustrating a book with them, and they sent me the text for the book and a formal offer memo which had the main terms of the agreement but wasn't the full-on contract yet. We had a little phone call a week or two later, which was great because I could ask some questions and understand how the process would work because I had no idea. I feel really lucky to have been emailed out of the blue for this opportunity, but also that was the intention behind building my Instagram account, was to build a public portfolio of my illustrations. The power behind building an audience on social media and showing your illustrations to the world is that it can open opportunities that may never have happened if I didn't put my art out there. So I signed on to illustrate a picture book. Then what happened? Let's break down the process of how the book was illustrated and how much involvement there was from the publisher. So once I had signed an agreement with HarperCollins for the book, they were really kind and helpful about it being my first book project and gave me all the information I needed about how the process would work and all the technical info for how the pages needed to be set up for printing. They sent me the text broken down into pages, or spreads, which are two-facing pages, and then I had the freedom to take that and create draft sketches of each page. They didn't provide a brief beyond a reference for the general type of book they were hoping for, but said that I could reach out at any time if I wanted some more guidance. I went to the library and borrowed some picture books that I liked the look of and used them for inspiration to see how books lay out their pages to tell a story. I knew I needed a variety of page layouts, and because this was my first time doing so many illustrations together, I found it helpful to do some research first. I did some really rough thumbnail sketches in pencil to get a feel for the page layouts, and then I started doing the digital sketches. I did all of my sketches and illustrations in Adobe Photoshop for this book, and I set up my artboards to the specifications that HarperCollins had sent me. Once I had sketched out every page, I bundled up my JPEGs as a PDF and sent it to HarperCollins for them to look over. They were really kind about my sketches and collected feedback from themselves and the author, and then brought that feedback to me to make some small adjustments. I was expecting them to have lots of input and want to change a lot of things, but was pleasantly surprised with how little they wanted to change. The cover is a little different because it's such an important part of the book, and I drew a few options for the cover, which were refined with feedback from HarperCollins. So once all of the drafts have been approved, I was then left to illustrate all 24 pages, plus the end papers and cover. I did one page in full color first and sent it through for the publisher to check I had set up everything correctly and that they were happy with how the family looked before I drew all of the illustrations. It's a little daunting to illustrate such a large project for the first time, but if you just chip away at it page by page, it comes together quite quickly. Some of the simpler pages only took me a few hours to draw, some of the more complex ones took me a day. I definitely underestimated how long the people would take me to draw and left them until last, which is something I definitely won't be doing again next time. I decided to draw each spread as a separate Photoshop file. I'm not sure if this is what digital illustrators usually do, but I found it helped keep my file sizes down and gave me the mental separation between each spread while I was illustrating them. So with all of the illustrations fully drawn, I exported all of the files as JPEGs and bundled them into a PDF to send through to HarperCollins. Once again, they were really lovely about the illustrations and collected their feedback along with the authors and came back with a few adjustments to make. Once everything was approved, I sent them through my Photoshop files with the text layers turned off. I illustrate with a lot of layers, and I wasn't sure how to merge things together and how much to leave layered, but of course I didn't want to name every single layer of texture I had drawn either. After a bit of back and forth to find a happy balance, I handed over the layered Photoshop files so that the book designer could make adjustments if they needed to when laying out the text, like they did with the text over the hot air balloon. The book designer lays out the text properly along with my illustrations, and they sent me a proof to look over and approve. And that's about it from me until the book is published. I received some advance copies of the book about 4 months later, and the book was published about 6 months after I finished the illustrations. Now I can go into bookstores in Australia and see the book I illustrated sitting alongside other books. So how do I get paid? For this book, I got paid and advanced against royalties split into 3 payments and receive a royalty rate of 5% of book sales on the retail value. I can't tell you exactly how much I got paid as an advance, which I know is not super helpful if you're trying to quote for a picture book yourself, but I can tell you that advances vary based on the publisher's minimum sales expectation and how that translates to royalty earnings, and also sometimes the experience and prior successes of the illustrator. So the amount I got paid up front for this book was a set amount of my royalties paid to me in advance, and my royalties on actual book sales will need to reach that amount before I start being paid any more royalties. I receive a report every 6 months with my royalties earned, but since the book was only recently published, I'll need to wait a little while for my first report. For this particular book, my advance was split into 3 payments, so I received just over a third upon signing the agreement to illustrate the book, just over a third upon completion of the final illustrations, and the remaining amount upon publication. I'm going to make a separate video soon explaining the creative process for the book, like how I chose the color palette, designed the characters, and decided on the layouts of the pages. Perhaps in that video or in a separate one, again, I'll include a technical breakdown for setting up my files for printing. I have so many video ideas for you guys that sometimes it's hard to decide what to include where. I'll leave in the description below where you can get yourself a copy of the book. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!